History of religion. Overview. The word religion means different things to different people. French sociologist Émile Durkheim defines it as a unified system of beliefs and practices related to sacred things. In this context, religion functions as a communal belief system tying a community together. Throughout the history of humanity, there have been many such communal religious systems. The history of religion may be defined as the study of how these religious systems originated and developed. Forms of religion existed long before writing existed to record them. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of religious practices as early as 60,000 BCE. Writing first appeared in Mesopotamia circa 3500 to 3000 BCE, making it possible to preserve records of religious beliefs and practices. Since the history of religion requires written records of religious systems, the period before writing appeared is known as prehistoric religion. Origin of religion. Archaeological evidence of specific burial customs and cult rituals shows that these practices are how religion started. The evidence also indicates that the first religions were primarily either animistic or polytheistic. Animism is the belief that inanimate objects in nature and natural phenomena possess souls and act with purpose. Polytheism is the belief in more than one god. Both beliefs ascribe events as happening as the result of supernatural activity. Some early religious practices rejected belief in supernatural agents. One of these practices is hedonism, the belief that the main purpose in life is to achieve pleasure. Hedonism is less a religious belief than a philosophy of life, attributing individual and group practices acting as agents to achieve pleasure. Naturalism rejects supernatural beliefs and sees everything in the universe as acting according to natural laws that can be studied and understood. One of the earliest religions, Jainism, originated in India around 2,500 years ago. Then a major global shift in religious beliefs and practices occurred between 900 and 200 BCE. This period is called the Axial Age. During this period, the Greek philosophy Platonism emerged with its belief in the existence of abstract objects beyond the material world. Platonism provided a philosophical base for theism, the belief that these abstract objects are created by a divine force. Theism helped localized religious beliefs around the world coalesce into major religious and philosophical belief systems that would shape human society for centuries to follow. The Axial Age was a foundational period for religions such as Greek polytheism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Zoroastrianism. The period also saw the development of Judaic monotheism, the belief in only one God, and Confucianism and Taoism in China. Religious history, early texts. Knowledge of historical religious systems comes primarily from the study of early texts that explain how religion started. Examples of these early foundational texts include the following. Pyramid texts are the oldest religious texts in the world. They include ancient Egyptian funerary texts inscribed on the walls of Egyptian pyramids. Consisting mostly of spells to help the deceased in the afterlife, they are believed to have been composed c. 3000 BCE and were available only to Egyptian royalty. Book of the Dead is a collection of spells that evolved from the older pyramid texts and appeared in the form of scrolls or tomb inscriptions. It was available to anyone who could afford an individual version and dates from c. 16th century BCE. Vedas and Upanishads are the foundational scriptures of Hinduism. They existed in oral form for many years before being written down c. 1500 to 500 BCE. The Upanishads are part of the Vedas and comment on the teachings of the Vedas. Torah is the foundational text of Judaism and includes the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. It was probably written between the 7th and 6th centuries BCE. The Dead Sea Scrolls are a collection of manuscripts discovered in 1947. They include most of the books of the Torah as well as other Jewish religious writings. Avesta is a collection of scriptures relating to Zoroastrianism, which developed from the oral teachings of Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra. It was compiled c. 1500 to 100 BCE. Tao Te Ching is the foundational text of Taoism. Attributed to a scholar named Laozi who may not be an actual person, it was composed c. 8th to 3rd centuries BCE and teaches the Tao or the Way. History of religion timeline. Although it is impossible to know precisely when religion was created, it is possible to trace the development of religious thought across the centuries. A timeline of a few important events in the history of religion follows. c. 2085 BCE Origin of Judaism. c. 1500 BCE Origin of Hinduism. c. 1500 BCE Origin of Zoroastrianism. c. 600 BCE Origin of Confucianism. c. 560 BCE Origin of Buddhism. c. 30 CE Origin of Christianity. c. 613 CE. Origin of Islam. Classical antiquity. The ancient Greeks practiced polytheism, the worship of many gods and goddesses. They believed that the gods influenced natural phenomena, and they developed myths explaining how the gods behaved and influenced life and nature. Public worship was a required part of daily life. Religious rituals also celebrated major life events. Elaborate shrines and temples were constructed to honor the gods and provide them homes since they were thought to possess human attributes. The Romans adapted the main elements of Greek religion, giving the gods new names. In the early centuries after the death of Jesus, Christianity, which is monotheistic, began its spread throughout Europe. It was seen as a threat to Roman authority. After the Roman Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, the new religion increased in popularity and eventually became the dominant religion throughout Europe and beyond. Middle Ages. The period from c. 500 CE to c. 1500 CE is called the Middle Ages. During this time, Christianity was the official religion throughout Europe. The power of the Pope in Rome in both secular and religious life was supreme. Since most people were illiterate, the Catholic clergy interpreted religion for the masses and controlled religious practices. In 1054, the East-West Schism occurred, separating what would become known as Catholicism, the Western version of Christianity, from Orthodoxy in the East. In Saudi Arabia in the 7th century CE, the Prophet Muhammad began teaching a monotheistic religion that became known as Islam. Islam spread rapidly through the Middle East, and its followers, known as Muslims, controlled both governments and society throughout the region. Followers of Islam, or Muslims, controlled most lands in the Middle East, including Jerusalem and other areas that both Muslims and Christians considered sacred. The Crusades were a series of religious wars fought between 1096 and 1291 to gain control of the Holy Land. Although the Christians were unsuccessful in winning the Holy Lands, the Crusades increased the power of the Church in Europe. They also created ill will among the Muslims and Jews already living in the Holy Lands, and conflict among the three groups would continue for centuries. In 1517, a German priest named Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses, exposing what he considered corruption within the Catholic Church. This signaled the beginning of the Protestant Reformation, a religious reform movement originally intended to protest and reform church practices. The movement eventually resulted in numerous groups leaving the Catholic Church to establish their own Christian denominations. These different denominations followed their own practices, and collectively they became known as Protestants. Modern era. Today the major religions of the world can be divided into two categories: monotheistic religions that trace their beginnings back to the prophet Abraham, including Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and polytheistic Indian religions, including Hinduism and Buddhism. The largest religion in terms of members worldwide is Christianity, with more than 2 billion followers. Islam has approximately 1.8 billion followers. Hinduism is the third most widely practiced religion with 1.1 billion followers. Why was religion created? It is impossible to say who created religion or precisely why religion developed in human societies. There are, however, two primary theories to explain the origin of religion. One theory considers how early humans saw the natural world around them. People observed things happening around them that they could not explain. For example, a river flooding annually, an earthquake, clouds moving, and the sun rising and sinking. They believed that supernatural forces caused them. In an attempt to gain some control, even if limited, over the actions of these forces, humans began trying to placate these forces through worship. Another theory is that as prehistoric hunter-gatherers evolved into larger communities, there was a need for a force to encourage cohesiveness and cooperation in society. While there were obvious benefits from cooperation within societies, inevitably, some members of the group did not cooperate and tried to take advantage of the others. Religion, with its emphasis on reward and punishment, placed a moral obligation on group members and encouraged everyone to cooperate. Religion acts as both a controlling and a motivating force in societies. Religious history is important because it offers a way to understand how different religions evolved into the influential positions they occupy in the world today. While perhaps not as important to society in the Western world as it once was, religion remains a strong influence on group dynamics. The differences in religious beliefs and practices that have developed have led to ongoing worldwide tensions.